I'm Christy McDonald. We are heading through the second day of the conference, and things are getting a little busy here in the parlor of the Grand Hotel. It's not every day that you get to have an anchor desk right here at the Grand Hotel, but we get to do it, and this is the 6th year that Detroit Public Television has been working with the Detroit Regional Chamber to bring this conference to you, so you can watch it from wherever you are. If you are not up here, you're able to follow all the sessions and all the interviews and really get a good sense of what the business leaders, philanthropists, educators, politicians are all talking about. All the decision makers are really up on this island this week, and there's a lot of things to tackle when it comes to the future of the state of Michigan. But we're going to talk a little business right now, and joining me now to do that, some of my favorite people. Doug Rothwell, he's the CEO of Business Leaders for Michigan. Doug, it's always good to see you.
Hey, Christy, good to see you.
Cindy Pasky, she is the CEO of Strategic Staffing Solutions. Cindy, it's good to have you here at the desk. And Sandy Baruah, you know him as the CEO of the Detroit Regional Chamber. Hey, Sandy.
I'm glad to be one of your favorite people.
You've
made my day, Christy.
You guys are some of my favorite people because I love, like, year after year, we have conversations about where we are in Michigan, and I feel to have the three of you sit down and kind of, let's sit back and see where we've been. When we started covering this conference about 6 years ago, things were a little different here in the state. So I want to get your input kind of year to year, where we've been in this last year, and I kind of want each one of you to say, kind of give us the overview on how we feel in the business climate in Michigan, Doug.
Well, we're pretty good. I mean, the reality is we're down to what? Unemployment below the national average. I mean, when was the last time that happened? We've regained about half to two-thirds of all the jobs we lost during that, awful decade of the 2000s. We've got an auto industry that is, going on steroids right now. I mean, they're just growing so fast, which is our signature industry in the state. So, I mean, I think you got to feel pretty good overall about where we are.
Cindy, from your vantage point, how do you feel?
Oh, I think we're certainly in a better place. Detroit's certainly in a better place, but we still have a fair amount of work to do. In the S3 world, with where we are around the world, I'm traveling all the time. So one of the ways I measure that is the questions that I receive about our city. And now it's, should we invest? What other industries could we do? Can we come and see what's going on? A much different set of questions than we had 6 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting because my next question was going to be, what's the perception of not only Michigan right now, but of Detroit? But why don't you go ahead and give us an idea?
It's absolutely different. It's the stories and the interest are, this is a place for entrepreneurs to be. This is a place that has now stellar political leadership, that has opportunities, that housing is available, land is available, but in a good way. And that's what we need, right? I mean, look at this. If I read 5 newspapers every single day, and I always have, and they're actually real papers. But if you run the headlines every single day, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, and look at what's actually being said about our state, and then, of course, for me, about our city, Detroit, it's night and day from 6 years ago. Night and day.
Sandy, what's your impression of where we are right now?
So I think Michigan and the city of Detroit gets the award for the most improved. Because when you consider where we were a decade ago, or frankly even 5 years ago, to where we are today, to really expand on Doug's points, we are tremendously in better shape. However, we have some red flashing lights. It's almost like the things that we need to do going forward are going to be even more difficult to resolve than the issues we resolved over the last 6 years. We have to solve our educational challenge in the state of Michigan. That's both K through 12 and in higher ed. And this is something that Doug and I have worked on quite a bit, but particularly Business Leaders for Michigan is really focused on the challenge we have in higher ed funding. We need more of our Michigan folks to get some sort of higher degree. It doesn't have to be a 4-year college degree, as important as that is, but a 2-year associate's degree, a highly skilled certificate like a nursing certificate or a welding certificate. Best-in-class regions across the world have roughly 60% of their population that fall into one of those 3 categories. Right now, we're at about 36% in the Detroit region. We need to do a lot better.
So, Doug, what are business leaders telling you about in terms of education programs here and also job training skills to be able to fill the jobs that they have?
Well, just what Sandy said. I mean, the reality is we're creating all these jobs, but we don't necessarily have the talent that we need to fill them all. And our worry is that will we be able to continue to fill those jobs in the future if we don't do what Sandy just mentioned, is to produce more talent with the right education and training that we need. Our message is, look, don't stop your education after high school, continue it. Let's make sure that we get more kids to come to school in Michigan so that we correct some of the demographic challenges we have as a state that's getting older. And let's do more to make sure that it's a priority in the budget to keep it affordable for kids to be able to get this education.
Okay, because that's what it always kind of comes back to. Do we have the political will and do we have the money to be able to invest in it? Because it seems like in Michigan there's so much that we could be investing in if we're talking about infrastructure, and I know that's a big thing also in terms of business when they're looking at expansion, looking at education. Do we have the political will, Cindy? Do we have that money lying around that we can infuse there?
Well, if we have money lying around, shame on all of us, right? Because it should all be put to use in an appropriate manner. I think we have the political will, and part of that is because I think we have the CEO will. So, look at the Workforce Advisory Council that Dave Meter and I co-chair for the mayor. I mean, it's Mark Royce, it's Matt from Lear, it's the 3 hospital CEOs, it's Roy Roberts, with the idea that we recognize that, yes, I agree that we need to continue to have levels of higher education. I'm equally passionate that we're always going to have individuals that their best job is to be a nursing tech, a radiology tech, and how do we make sure that we remove the barriers? And so, to your question, when you have all of those CEOs to actually willing to sit around the table, show up, form committees and say, this is how we're going to identify jobs and this is how we're going to remove barriers to train individuals to be in those jobs, that tells me I have an opportunity to accomplish it. You always have to have political will, but a lot of times political leadership and will is driven by CEO leadership and will.
Yeah, Sandy, let me ask you though, in terms of when we're talking about investment, are we investing enough here in Michigan in terms of selling our state? Are we giving maybe enough incentives for business to be here, to expand here? Are we doing a good job in that sense?
So in terms of selling the state as a destination for visitors, absolutely. The Pure Michigan campaign is an award-winning campaign. We're spending a good deal of money on it. Could we spend more on it? Yes, but again, it's about setting priorities. The issue about incentives is a tricky one. This governor, who we love and I think on balance has done a really remarkable job, has said, let's not really rely on incentives and let's rely more on a business environment. But the challenge is that our businesses every day are being recruited by other states that are literally putting tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on the table to attract those businesses and other businesses to their state. Let's give you an example. The Volvo plant that went to South Carolina got an incentive package in excess of $350 million. Now, Michigan's not in a position to compete with that. So those investments are going down to South Carolina. If we lose too much of our manufacturing base, which provides a lot of the jobs for the folks that don't have the higher degree, and I agree with Cindy completely, we need to do both things. We need higher skilled jobs and jobs for folks who don't have those skills. We need jobs for everyone in the state of Michigan. If we lose that manufacturing base, we're going to be challenged there. And eventually the R&D, we might lose that too, and the headquarters, we might lose that too. Capital and investment and jobs are going to go where the talent is available, and and where the incentives are, and all those things. So it's all these things have to work together.
Yeah, Doug, do you want to tackle that also, or pick up on anything that Sandy said in terms of that slippery slope of incentives and what we're doing here in Michigan?
Well, I agree with everything Sandy said. I mean, I think the concern that we have is that now's the time when you really want to strike. The economy's relatively good. We've corrected a lot of the problems that we had over the last 5 or 6 years, and we have a more stable financial base to work from. But our worry is that if all the other states in the country have tools in their toolbox that we don't have, and if they're outspending us, then we are at risk of losing the one industry that really has a chance to be so transformative, our mobility industry, and we can't afford for that to happen.
Cindy?
Compliments to Doug, because the thing that Doug has accomplished with business leaders to Michigan is all of the other things that someone would consider when they're making a choice as to where they're going to go. He's led the drive to change that, whether it's making it easier to do business here, the number of rules and regulations, how the taxes are. The one thing businesses dislike the most is the unknown, right? You need to know exactly how much it's going to cost. We're working on the talent challenge. We certainly have a lot of talent. I think part of it is recognizing that for some industries, they're here and they're already invested. They're not leaving. So if you look at the largest net increase of jobs in the state, it's probably driven by our healthcare industry. Look at the level of research that's in that industry tied to our universities. No one's going to recruit the University of Michigan away from the state of Michigan, right? Nobody's going to recruit the Detroit Medical Center away. So there has to be a balance, because we are always going to want to be the heart for the auto manufacturing industry, but it shouldn't be to the detriment of the industries that are actually creating jobs right now, net increase jobs.
I want to talk a little bit about, you spoke about it a little bit earlier, Cindy, about entrepreneurs and small businesses. You know, when we come up to Mackinac, we're sometimes talking about big corporations and big CEOs, but there's been a lot of focus, Sandy, you've talked about it at the conference in the last couple of years, and looking at those small business owners and the entrepreneurs, and especially the ripe situation of Detroit and what's happening in Detroit right now.
Well, you're right. I mean, we've tried to focus on that in the conference, and right now, literally, Damon John from Shark Tank is ending his presentation on stage as we speak. And he's conducting a pitch competition where we're going to select a winner of an entrepreneurial company. We had a competition in Detroit, there we had a competition in Grand Rapids. Those two companies are competing on stage right now, and that's, you know, it's one thing that we can do here at the conference to highlight the importance of entrepreneurship, because, you know, this great region, this great state was made great by entrepreneurs by the last name of Dodge and Ford. And the next generation, or the current generation, you know, the last names are Pasky and others. And then we need to figure out, you know, who's going to follow the Cindy Paskys in the next generation? Who are those next generation going to be of entrepreneurs that are going to be small businesses today but can be big businesses tomorrow?
When if you heard the mayor speak yesterday, you know, the match program in Detroit, the success for that program it's absolutely 100% successful, which is unique, and the majority of the entrepreneurs are minority-owned, Detroit-based. So you start to drive what you always know is there, and you don't create 1,000 jobs at one time, but you create pockets of real sustainable jobs, and more importantly, you create the type of economy and ecosystem that you want.
It seems like a big stumbling block is always capital. And are we seeing that small businesses and entrepreneurs are getting access to that capital that they need, Doug?
Oh, much better than it used to be. I
Right.
mean, Michigan was a laggard, for example, in venture capital for years, and now we rank about middle of the pack, which is pretty darn good. And we made that improvement over a very short period of time. There's more deals that are coming into Michigan now with high-tech companies than we've ever seen before. I mean, Cindy's an example of that. You know, she's a high-tech company, and she's based here in Detroit. So it's better. Could it be even better? Of course it could. But you look back again over the last 5 or 6 years, and it's night and day.
All right, so what would you say should be the top 3 things that we need to focus on in the state of Michigan right now?
Well, it's got to be education, because that's all about talent. Infrastructure, we've not fixed our problems yet. And, you know, we do think economic development, getting a more aggressive, a proactive economic development program going.
Or maybe something that is more even, so people can say, they're not going to change it in
That's
2 more
right.
years. They're not going to pull funding from it, or it's going to maintain a thing. What would
Yep.
you say, Cindy, in terms of the 3 things that we need to focus on?
I would say recognizing that the advancements that our governor and our mayor have made, we need to ensure that we continue to have individuals and folks and voters engaged in our political leadership. We can't assume that the next governor and the next mayor will be as good as what we have. So let's ensure that we have a population that recognizes they need to continue to engage, they need to continue to vote, they need to continue to want to see leadership that makes the tough decisions. Then absolutely education, but for me education isn't just what's going on in the schools and the universities, it's education for individuals all in the state of Michigan that want to re-enter the workforce. How do we remove the barriers to allow that to happen? And then I agree with Doug. We have a great story here. Let's build on that and do economic development.
All right, Sandy?
So I agree with my fellow panelists. I would augment one thing that Cindy said a little bit. I agree completely that we need to maintain you know, the kind of leadership that we've been electing in the state of Michigan and the city of Detroit. But we need to find a way to kind of fix our political system so we can get more done at the local and state level, but the state level in particular, right? You know, we have a kind of essentially a polarized political system. People call it broken. I really don't call it broken. It's just polarized in our nation and our state. You know, we have a very, very left and a very right. We need some way to bring the political parties together, bring our political system together, so we can find more of a center. You know, we used to be a country that found a lot in the center. You know, compromise was found in the center. Now we spend a lot of time saying it's either this way or that way.
Well, I think people say compromise is a weakness.
Well, that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. And if we in Michigan can kind of get around that or get past that, I think we can set an example for the nation, and I think it'll serve us very well.
All right, as we kind of wrap up here, I want you to tell me the most interesting conversation you've had so far. About what?
Oh, geez.
Come on, I turn around and I turn around and I look in the parlor and I see everyone talking to everyone and I'm done. You know, you wonder, you want to be like that fly on the wall. This is what's so great about the conference. What's the most interesting conversation you've had? Or one of the most interesting conversations you've had?
I don't know if I can say it's the most interesting. I'd say that, what's interesting to me is that just what Sandy said, the political campaign season never stops.
No.
And we're already having people running for governor, and it's 2.5 years away. And, I'm already getting approached.
Are you
got
running, Doug?
fatigue?
No, no.
Okay, I was going to say,
Doug Rothwell is declaring today
I'll put a
on
bumper
this
sticker on my
No,
car.
no. But I mean,
your chief of staff.
it's
We're
all,
good.
but it's already. It's like, didn't we just
I want
finish
that
this?
ticket. All right, Cindy, what
Mike,
about
you
you?
know, I was so fortunate last night that the dinner I attended, I got to sit next to Judge Rhodes. So what a magical 2 hours to be able to sit next to someone who served on the bench in an impeccable manner, was steadfast, straight on, and never wavering for the city of Detroit, and now has taken on probably one of the largest challenges we have. So it would be hard to top that conversation.
That's a good one. Sandy, what about you? You get to talk to everybody.
No, actually, the misnomer is that I spend most of my time backstage or talking to reporters or taking care of VIPs that something has gone wrong, right? that is my entire experience. But like Cindy, last night we had a great opportunity to have a small group, an intimate conversation with Ron Fournier, who's one of our keynote speakers, and he was very insightful, and he talked a lot about his book, Love That Boy, about his autistic son and his journey of being a father anew, and that was really moving and really touching.
You know, I had a chance to sit down yesterday with Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha from Flint, and that to me was one of those conversations that was just the passion that she brings, and just the smarts. She's funny, and she is straight on. I mean, she's got her eye.
Great presenter,
on
too.
and
She's
a
amazing
great
on
presenter, and
stage.
I think it was very telling when she walked out there and people gave her a standing O beforehand.
Yeah.
So, but it's neat. But again, you guys are actually my favorite. You're my favorite conversation. I've had. Thank you so much, Doug Rothwell,
welcome.
Cindy Pasky,
Thank
and of
you.
course Sandy Baruah for being with us.